Hi there, my name is Klaus Teltenkötter and I'm teaching digital design at School of Design in Mainz, Germany. This video has a target group of architects and designers, and it will be an introduction into 3D modeling. All the examples you saw the last seconds were done by my students in their first year. So if you want, you can make it too and have fun learning 3D Studio Max for conceptual design. The approach of conceptual design is that you have flexibility and the option to build different kind of variations for your design. As a parametric design tool, this is exactly the strength of 3D Studio Max. And you can imagine that 3D Studio Max is a little bit like Photoshop with layers. So you have modifiers and you can stack these modifiers on top of each other. And most of the time you start with a really simple shape. You add these modifiers on top, and I just go through this modifier list. And depends on how you set up your modifiers, you can still go into the settings and change the parameters like you want. If you're happy with one of your design variations, then there are not so many steps anymore to make a nice visualization. So let's now start right now from the beginning. This is what it could look like if you use 3D Studio for the first time. I recommend to change to my DE Workspace. The DE Workspace is based on the Workspace design standard. You can get more information on my internet page, designstrategies.org. The reason why I use this workspace is there's this ribbon, and this ribbon is quite intuitive, and if you don't have much experience with 3D Studio Max, it's really complex to navigate through all these menus. So it's just an easier way to get into 3D Studio Max. If you don't want to use a DE workspace, then this is not a big issue. You can just use the design standard workspace. It's also quite common to switch between these workspace while using, especially with this default with enhance menu. And if there are any issues, you just go to reset to default state. So sometimes if there are some things with your toolbars, just use this button and you get a refresh of your workspace. You can open files and save them, import, export through this main 3D Studio Max icon. There's also this handy thing of in terms of summary info. If you have a little bit more done in your scene, you can see the amount of objects, lights, cameras, and things like this. Really handy. If you use the Workspace 3D Studio Max with the design standard settings, and you go to get started, the first thing you should look at under customize are the unit setups. There are display units and there are system units. The display units are the units which are shown in your menu bars. For example, I have the settings like centimeters. I can change it to meters. I can change them to millimeters. Doesn't matter. Really important are the system units. Never change the system units while you're working on a scene in between. This will muddle up your whole scene. And if you work in an architectural or interior context, I recommend to work in centimeters or possibly in meters. With my settings of the workspace, it's set up to centimeters. You can change the display units if you want to, but I would recommend that they're always the same like the system units, so you're on the safe side. Under Customize, you also find the preferences. We don't want to look too deep into this. What I want to show is that in scene selection, I always take auto window crossing. It's a little bit like AutoCAD, so it's an easy way of selecting objects. Under files, there's also auto backup, and this is always enabled. And interesting for you is that every 5 minutes it will save one auto backup file, in total 3 files, and you will find these auto backup files under your folder documents and your Windows Explorer. Here you go. These buttons under Get Started are a little bit like the buttons under the 3D Studio Max folder. Under File, Save, there's this Archive, which is a really interesting tool because normally all files like materials, textures are not integrated in 3D Studio Max. There are external files, and if you want to save them at one location, you should save it as a zip archive file. That's the best way of exchanging 3D Studio files and to be sure that all your objects and all your materials are a part of this. In your daily life, you just go into the Save As under your 3D Studio Max icon, and I always recommend that you save different kind of versions. You can go to this little plus and then you save version 02. You can just see it here in your menu. It's important that you don't work on one file for several days. I exchange the name of my files every 30 minutes, so I don't lose information and I can always go back to old file names. If you want to import 3D objects from other programs, for example from AutoCAD, you just go and use the import button. If you want to import 3D objects, cameras or anything else from 3D Studio Max file, then you choose the file and you can just select which kind of objects you at the end of the day want to import. What I definitely recommend is a 3D Studio Max help, which is excellent. You just go into search, and for example, you want to know more about the clothes modifier. Then everything is written really well. You get information. You sometimes also have little videos which explain how to do things. And also in terms of videos, there are so many videos on YouTube about 3D Studio Max. So if you have a problem or you want to get more information, you will find it in the internet or just use the 3D Studio Max help. Okay, let's have a look at the interface of 3D Studio Max. I first go into File New, so we start from scratch. And what you see is here on top is the main menu bar. And if you go through, there are already so many sub-menus and menus that it's really difficult to deal with this at the beginning. That's also the reason why we work with our DE workspace, which is more or less the same like the design workspace, because it's much easier and a lot of functions here are just concentrated and taken out of the main menu. Underneath the main menu bar there are toolbars, and these toolbars with right mouse click at an empty space can be switched on and off. For example, now I switched off the command panel, I switch on the command panel, I switch off the ribbon, and I switch on the ribbon. You can deconnect the toolbars and adjust it in a way you want to use. Here on the left side is my Scene Explorer, where you get information about your objects. On the right side is really important, my command panel. We look at all these things a little bit later. In the middle there is my viewport, or there are my viewports, and the active viewport is always the viewport with a little yellow line around the edges. You can select, for example, now the front viewport, and I always recommend that you select it with your right mouse click, because this saves you from select and move things. So always do it with the right mouse click. And if you have, for example, one viewport, you can also go to the right corner at the bottom, and you can go into maximize viewport, toggle the little button here on the right, and make it big or make it small. You can also use the Alt and W key, which is actually as a shortcut the same. So I just use Alt and W, and I can extend expand the selected viewport and also go back. Before we talk more about the viewport, we have to create some objects in our scene to learn how to navigate. So I just go to the command panel, and the first part of the command panel is the create area. And I just go into geometry and into box. I just click in the viewport with my left mouse button. I hold my left mouse button, and now I unclick and move up the mouse, and that's a way of how to draw my first box, and my last click will finish drawing the box, and then I can change the parameters in my menu. For example, I want to have a box of 50 centimeters by 30 centimeters by 80 centimeters as one example. And I do the same with the sphere. I just click, hold, and that's a way of how to draw a sphere. And there are also other things I can do. I just open my window. You can just see how many kind of objects I'm able to draw. For example, like under extended primitives, I have this Hedra, which I really like. I just draw my Hedra and move to perspective with my left mouse click so I can see it a little bit better. And this Hedra is really nice because you have many options in terms of exploring nice geometries. And so there are also other things in terms of extended primitives, and there are even really nice things like parametric stairs. For example, if I use this spiral stair, and again I just click in my top viewport, hold my mouse and open my spiral staircase, and I unclick now and move my mouse up, click again, and if I now again with my middle mouse move the viewport, then you can see that I just draw a really nice staircase. This staircase is fully parametric. You can choose different kind of staircase designs. You can change the radius, you can change the turns and the width, and many other things. If you were not able to follow right now, don't worry about this. The aim of this is just to animate a little bit that you play with this, because the most important thing is that you practice. And for learning how to use the viewport, we actually are fine with two objects, with a box and with our sphere. If you want to work with 3D Studio Max properly, you need a mouse with 3 buttons, left, right, and middle mouse button. And I just use the select and move tool, and once you did it, you can select objects with your left mouse click, and with your right mouse click you always get a context menu. For example, if you chose an object and I just click right mouse click, I have a lot of options like move, rotate. I have object properties, which is really important. We talk about this later. And if you click somewhere else in the viewport, you deselect. And also here you have options just for 3D Studio in general. If you click and hold the middle mouse, then you can just move the canvas of your viewport. You can also do it with this one. And if you use the wheel of your middle mouse, you can zoom in and out. Always remember, select the viewport with the right mouse click, because I don't want to by mistake just select an object and move it. So always select with right mouse click. If I go into perspective, I can also move in and out with your middle mouse steering wheel. And if you hold the Alt key and use the middle mouse, that's really good and really important, then you can turn And while turning, you can also move in and out. So just the Alt and the middle mouse, and you already have a lot of options in terms of navigating around your objects in your scene. There's a huge difference if you move around the object or actually if you turn or move the objects itself. This is one of the big basic beginner's mistake. If you move the object, then actually you transform the object. For example, I just select the box and I just can move the box, but that's not the way of how to look at this. So if you want to move this, then just imagine it's a little bit like using a camera and moving a camera around the object and not turning the object. And if you want to work with the viewport, you use these parts. These are the elements and the buttons which enable you to navigate in the scene. You can again with this move in and out. You can also do it with all 4 viewports, move in and out. And there's one thing which is really good. This is this zoom extend. If you have selected one object, you can just click on zoom extend, and you just wherever this is in the viewport, you can just zoom in. The same here. I just select my viewports and go on zoom extend, and if you use the next button zoom extend all selected, then it just works with all viewports at the same time. And if I move out again with my middle mouse and select both objects, this means string A, for example, Control A, I can select all my objects, and if I then go into zoom extend all selected, then it just moves to all the viewports. I just zoom out again, and as a beginner, it just sometimes can happen that all your objects are gone. So what you can do is you can just say string A or Control A, and so you select all of them, and then you go into zoom extend all selected. And if you still don't see anything, then I would expect that there's just nothing you've seen, one option. Or it's like this, there are just some very small objects far away, and so it's just too small in terms of zoom extend all. And I also recommend that you always work close to the origin, X, Y, and Z. So don't go too far away from the origin, because also then 3D Studio starts to abstract things in terms of dimensions and things like this. And another way of how to navigate and select, if you just use the Scene Explorer and you just go here in this little layer, you can open the layer, and for example, if you just select the sphere, which you did right now, and then go into zoom selected, or even go into zoom selected for all viewports. This is also a way of how to select and get to your objects again easily. And again, just see that you're always close to the origin, then it's much better in terms of navigation. If you work with your mouse properly, then the other ones you don't need so much. But there is this zoom region where you can just select the part and just move in. And there are also little edges. So if you see these edges, then there's a pull-down menu, and there are others, field of view. There's this palm. It's a little bit like the middle mouse where you can move with your hand. There is also something like a walk-through. I hardly use it, but some users use it quite often. So it's a little bit like a first-person shooter game thing, and You can orbit and around the object. Also, here's a little pull-down menu, so you have different kind of options: orbit, around, selected, or the whole scene. Also, this is not really important to me. I always go for the default and use a lot my mouse and Alt button. The last button I use quite often. I always already showed it to you. If you have selected, for example, the viewport, you can see it with the yellow line. You go to maximize viewport toggle, and so extend one viewport, and you can also go back, and you can also do it with the shortcut Alt and W, and this is how you can change between the viewport settings. And on the left side of 3D Studio Max, there's also the option to choose change the setting of the viewport. I like it with a 4, but you can also use different kind of designs if you want to. You can also change the viewport while moving these edges. I just grab this with my left mouse and expand a part and make the other smaller. I use this quite often. I again go into Alt W, and what's also quite handy is this view wheel. You can just turn it and grab it with your left mouse. You can also just go onto top view and go to the back view, so side. You can also go to this middle position, like the corner position. So it's really good in terms of how to navigate this. You can also, when I am in perspective, grab the wheel and turn it around. So this is also a good way of how to navigate. And there's a little bit of a home button, which also turns back the wheel view. Okay, let's go back with Alt W to all 4 viewports. And there's some settings in the viewport. For example, here's this little plus symbol, and you can just choose viewport settings. This disable is for me only interesting if it was disabled, to enable it again. Sometimes the performance of your computer is not enough, and then it says disable, so you can just go back to enable. For example, if I go to disable and I disable the viewport, then I can, with my select and move the object, and you can just see that nothing happened in my top view until I select my view with right mouse click, and then you can just see that the object moves. So it only works if something is happening here. Just remember, if it's not working and you see the disable, you have to enable it again. There's also something which is important, is show grid. That's also the shortcut G. You can switch it on and off. Quite often I have it off. And there's a view cube, there's another steering wheel, and other settings which are more for advanced users, not so much so important at the beginning. What's interesting is that you have underneath top the option to select cameras if you have already cameras in your scene. And there's a top, bottom, front, back, left and right view, and these are all orthographic views. If I go to perspective and do the same, and I just change to orthographic, then you can just see that it is a little bit like an isometric view. So there is no vanishing point anymore, and I can just go back to perspective. I can also use the shortcut P. This is more or less the same. And there's one thing on the long run for visualization: show save frame. This just means this is the size of the visualization which you will get if you just use your render button, but we talk about this another time. You have to imagine your viewports as real-time visualizations. So they really depend on the performance of your graphic card. And you can change the way of how the 3D objects will be visualized in this pull-down menu. And if I just extend again my my perspective view and go on this button and hold the button, then you can just see that there are different ways of how to show objects. One is the realistic way, which takes the most performance. The other one is the shaded, more the old-fashioned way, which is sometimes also really nice. I also use it quite often. There are also other ways of how to show your objects, for example, with these edges. If I have this cube and I add segments, for example, like this, and go again into my menu and just say edges off, then you can just see that you see the cube and the sphere without edges. I go again into edges and I use this shaded, and if I go through this menu again, you can just see that there are different kind of ways of how to show your object. The most important ways of how to visualize your viewport is shaded, realistic, or wireframe. And so for this there are some shortcuts. If I just press F3, then you change between wireframe and the display mode before, so F3. If I go into F4, then I can switch on edges, show edges or not show edges. So F3 and F4 I really use often also in combination, so you should really practice this and get used to this. If I go to realistic, then again I can change between wireframe and realistic, so it's always between wireframe and realistic. F3 and F4 switches on the edges of my 3D objects. There are other settings which you will learn if you have a little bit more, if you're a little bit more into 3D Studio. It's always important that I normally use illuminate with scene lights. I want to have ambient occlusion, shadows, and things like this. So these are not important settings if you just leave them on default. Okay, now that we looked at how to navigate in the viewport, we just want to look now how to select objects, and the next step also how to transform objects. This is something you do in this main menu bar. The first thing which is important is the button select objects. There's a difference between select and move object. Sometimes I really just want to select the objects. I don't want to touch it, move it, just because I want to, for example, apply something. That's when you use the select button. There's also something like a pull down menu next to this. For example, if you just go back to standard primitives again, if you just have different kind of objects in your scenes, for example, like a camera, just enter one camera in the scene, then I just can change from all to cameras. And the only thing I can do, for example, so I have to deselect, otherwise I build one camera after the other. That's really important. Now I can't select my objects anymore. I can only select my cameras. Also, when I say string A, I can only select my cameras, and I just press the delete button and I have deleted this. But really important, be aware of that you have used this tool and you just go back to geometry, or you just go back to all. Otherwise you think 3D Studio is not working anymore and you want to deinstall and install it. It's definitely not like this. It's still working, but you just chose the selection filter. You can also use select by name. I use this quite often again. That's why I also would recommend to remember the shortcut. The shortcut is H. If you just press H, then you just see that the select from scene menu open, and here you can let you show all the objects, geometry, line shapes, lights, cameras, and if I switch off geometry, then you can just see that all the objects are gone because both are 3D geometries. You can also just go into this field and just say invert display. Just have a look, you can't see the geometry. If I go into invert display, it just turns it around. You now would not be able to see the lights and the cameras. You can say display none or display all. And what I also somehow quite use often is this kind of menu. If I have many, like hundreds of objects, then it's really difficult to navigate through the amount of objects. And if I want to look for one specific object and I know the name, I just enter BO, and then, for example, you can only see the objects which start with a B or, for example, with a C, like sphere. And this is also a really good way of how to select objects, and then you just select them. And for example, also hold the string key, and then you can select more, or the Alt key, and just select some of them, like in every other window computer program. And you just go on OK, and you have selected these objects. You select objects with select objects. You can also just say rectangular selection. By the way, if you press down the mouse, always if there's a little bit of an edge here, then there are more options. Then you can see that the different shapes are not really important to me. So if I go and just choose rectangular select, then you can just select it like this. And here's something like window crossing, which actually doesn't work for my DE workspace because I changed it to autocross like in AutoCAD. So normally it's like this. If you go there and you have the full window, then you have it selected. If you go and to this setting and only select the corner, then a small object, then also the object is selected. But what I have set up in my customize preferences, I went to auto window crossing by direction, which I think is much better. So what I do, if I go from left to right, I have to go over the whole objects to be able to select them. And if I go from left to right, then I select everything I touch. Another thing is, if you have selected this and just also want to select this one, then you just use the string button, and you can see this little plus on underneath my mouse cursor. And so that's a way of how to add things to your selection. And if you just press the Alt key, then you can see the little minus. And again, if you just go over the object, that's the way of how to deselect. If I have many objects in my scene and I really want to work only on this one and the other ones I don't want to see right now, I can just go on this isolate selection toggle in the lower part of the menu, and I can switch it on, and I can also switch it off. And you can just see that I do it with different kind of objects. That's sometimes better than hiding objects, which you can also do. If I go on right mouse click, then I can just say hide selection, or hide unselected, or hide all, or unhide by name. If I go into hide selection like this objects, I can again say right mouse click and I go into unhide by name, and here again I just see the object which is hidden. You can see it with a little light which is off also here in my scene explorer. And if I now go to unhide, then the object is there again, also the little light is on. This was already really a lot in terms of selection, but last but not least, what I really love, if you're a little bit more advanced, is my selection sets. So if I have two objects, for example, I can just go into my line and just say this is selection 2. And if I just have these objects, or could be anything else, any other object, just say this is my selection box. And if I go here and just say this is my selection sphere, then what you can do is you can just open the pull-down menu and just say 2, these are the 2s, and I go into sphere. This is a sphere, really easy because it's only one and can be many objects, and box. And the advantage of this is this little menu next to this. So you just see in your selection box what's inside. There's only the box inside. In selection 2, what's inside? Box and sphere. So if there are any other objects, for example, like a cylinder, okay, then I can just add it, for example, to my selection set and just say plus, and then it's in this cylinder. I can also just move it to any other selection set and also delete it out of my selection set. If I just move it again to 2, I'll do it like this, 2, and I'll just close it. Then you can just see what's happening. Just go to box and I go to 2, and you guys just see that all these 3 are selected. Really good, much better than any grouping or whatever kind of way you want to connect these objects. Please use a selection set. Okay, let's take a deep breath and look at the transformation tools. What we have, I just change again to Alt W, by the way, the shortcut, move a little bit to my top view. And so let's have a look at the transformation tools. What I have is select and move. What I have is select and rotate, select and uniform scale, and select and place. Okay, select and move. I just zoom a little bit into my top view, and the first thing you want to see is that there is something like a gizmo. A gizmo is this thing consists of 3 arrows. If I go into perspective, just open this, then you can just see that there is this green, blue, and red arrow. At the end of the day, these are the colors of RGB, and the red one is the X, the green one is the Y, and the blue one is the Z dimension, so RGB. It's really easy to remember. And what you have to understand is how to deal with this gizmo. Just zoom in a little bit, and you can just see that you can touch the X-axis and just move it, and then you just move it only into the X-axis, Y-axis. So I just right mouse click, select top view, and you can just see that you can only move it into one direction, into the Y direction. Whatever you do, that's the only thing you can do. If you go into X, then you can only move it into the X direction. But if you move your mouse to the middle, then you can move it in X and Y direction at the same time. Okay, the same in perspective. I just go on maximize viewport toggle. Again, I zoom out a little bit, and you just see if I click into the middle of X and Y, then you can see this yellow rectangle, and you can move it in all directions in X and Y. If I go a little bit up, then I have the Z and Y selected, so I can only move it in Z and Y direction, and the same with X and Z direction. And if you go here, then you can move it in all dimensions, which is also good to know. So just go on the little on this little square thing, and then you're completely flexible in how you want to move it. Also interesting to see that you have one look at this toolbar here. If you just select the Y direction, you can just see that the button of the Y direction is on. If you just select the Z direction, you can see that the Z direction is on, and just play a little bit, you can just always see that it's changing. So this is the menu bar. I just right mouse click on this field. It's the axis constraint menu bar. I just switch it off and switch it on again. Normally, I always have enable axis constraint and snap toggle on. We talk about this a little bit later, but just be aware of that. Normally, this should be on, and when you move it, you can just see that also this has an impact of your setting. Okay, so far we only moved objects in the viewport in look and feel, but not with proper measurements and proper numbers. So what you can do is, if you go on right mouse click on move, then you can just move objects with precise values. For example, I just want to move it 2.5 centimeters in X direction. So I just move it and enter with my my enter key, or I just move it 10 centimeters in X direction and minus 20 centimeters in Y direction. And this is what you do if you use this offset world. If I go again into my viewport toggle, then you just see that this object is not centered to the middle. It's not an absolute world 0, 0, 0. If I just enter here 0, and again in Y direction 0, then you can just see that it just moved to the middle. So the absolute world is always relative to the origin, and the offset is always relative to the object. So if I just moved again 40 centimeters in X direction, then after closing my function with the enter key, then it's 0 again. And you can just do it with right mouse click. What you can also do is you can just change the number in the lower part of your interface in this area. And now again, I just say I want to move it 60 centimeters, and now it's at this position. And there's one field where you can change between absolute mode and relative mode. Now I'm again in this offset, in this relative mode. So here you can choose it like 30 centimeters minus 30 centimeters from its own position. And if I just go back again and into my absolute mode, and I just enter 0 here, then it's in the origin again. This is also a very good way of moving it. And last but not least, you can also just say right mouse click, change to rotate, go to move again. And if I go to move and to this little setting menu window, then you can also open the window, which is actually the same. So that's a third way of how to enter the transformation values in terms of moving the object. Rotate is quite similar. Select and rotate, I just select right now, and you can also see that there is this gizmo, and we just first see it in our perspective, and I just extended it a little bit. And also here you have this RGB. If you just choose the wet one, then you turn around through the X direction. If you just you select the green one, then you turn around the Y direction. If you use the blue one, then you turn around in the blue direction. You can also go in between, and then you just see that you can turn it around in all directions. And also here you obviously can do it when I select the top view, or for example if I select the left view, you can also do it in the other viewports. And also here, if you go on right mouse click, you have the transformations, so you can just from this position on move it or rotate it again 20 degrees around the X direction. And if you just moved it or rotated by mistake, just go again in absolute mode and enter in X, Y, and Z 0 again, and then you are at the first position. When I rotate objects, I mainly or quite often use the angle snap. The angle snap has the advantage that you move in steps, in this case of 5 degrees. So it's a better way of how to control to move the object. You can also change it right mouse click and then you can change the angle snap and just say you want to have 15 degrees, which is probably quite something. So you can just see that it just moves in big steps of 15 degrees. So if you choose rotate, be aware of that you can do it precisely. Everything is about precision if I use 3D Studio Max, because we want to use it for building, we want to use it for design, and the measurings and everything should fit. Okay, next thing is the select and uniform scale, so you can scale objects. I just selected right now. And here again you have the gizmo, and if I just see this in perspective, you can just see that if I move to the middle, I scale it in X, Y, and Z direction completely equally. If I just go and select only Z and Y, then I just scale it asymmetrically, and I can do it in all directions. And also here there's the options of percent snap toggle, so it now goes into steps, which you actually with right mouse click can adjust. Now it's in the steps of 10%. I switch this off again. Also right mouse click, you can change how to scale it in X, Y, and Z dimension. And you can also just say I want to increase the thing of 50% on top. So you go just at 150%, and so you increase it. And with scaling is one really important thing which is difficult for you to understand right now, but it's a big issue. Just don't scale objects when you also use the Modifier panel, which is quite normal. Only scale in the modifier itself. We will talk about this another time. Always see that in your object there is 100%, and if there is not 100%, you have problems sometimes with all your other modeling functions. So keep this already in mind that this can be an issue. And if you have something like this, and for example like 300, then you have to do the following. We talk about this later. You have to go into utilities and just say reset XForm, reset selected, and then you can see that it's 100% again. And if you go into the modify, and we talk about this also a little bit later, so don't worry about this, then you can just see that on top there's something like an XForm modifier. Just keep it in mind, forget it right now if you watch the video for the first time, but this is an important issue for the future. Okay, we are getting closer to another nice tool. It's a little bit like the IKEA tool. It's select and place. And I just choose this right now. And I just go to my sphere, and I already drew a cylinder. And what I do is I just select my sphere and my object and go into isolate selection. And I also go into zoom extend all selection. And if you didn't draw a cylinder beforehand, just go into create and go into cylinder, click, hold, and extend, and I make it even a little bit smaller, also like this. And I just hold my shift key and drag it along the Y direction, And this is the way of how to make copies. We talk about cloning also a little bit later, but I just want to make a copy of 5 objects. 5. And number of copies 5. I finish with OK. And that's a way of how to draw 5 cylinders. And I just want to take one of the cylinder and use my select and place. And if I now take it and move it onto my ball, you can just see that it just follows the surface, which is really handy, which definitely doesn't work like this if you use select and move. If you use select and move, then you see it just completely ignores the object. So you go again into select and place, and this is an excellent way of how to position objects. You can even do it like this. I just select several, for example, like this bunch of objects, and again I just move on it, and you can just see that they all sit on this object on my curve. So it's a really nice way of following turns and things like this. There are also some settings with this option. If you go on right mouse click, there's something like a rotate. You can choose the object axis. So if I just go into Y, you can just see that they are flat. If I go into X, you can see there's not a big difference, by the way, in this terms. If I go again into Z, that's also what we want to have. There's something like a pillow mode. So if they could intersect, it just avoids to intersect. There's also something like use base as pivot. For example, if I have a sphere and I just draw a sphere, and also here again I hold my shift key and move this up. I still hold my shift key, and I have a copy of 4 spheres. And these spheres right now have their gizmo in the middle. If I choose these 4 spheres, 5 spheres actually, in my front view, and again go into select and place, you just see what's happening. They're just half into my other sphere, just because it's related to the pivot. But if you go use base of the object as pivot, then you can just see that they are just on top of each other. So most of the objects which have a pivot point which is not at the lower base, like in my cylinder. In my cylinder it's like this. If I go and say select and move, you can see that the pivot point, that's the center of the object with this object, is in the lower area, and with the sphere it's not like this, then it's in the middle. Just play with this, and it is actually really fun to see how this thing works and how easy it is to place objects. Important is that you have a newer version of 3D Studio Max 2015 and higher. The last thing I want to show in terms of transformation, which became important to me in the last month, is this pull down menu. I first select all my objects. I just go into my scene state and just take my cylinders and my sphere, select them all, and just enter my delete button. And there is still this box, and I can now see this box. And what I do is I just go into zoom, extend, all selected, and I just move this a little bit. Rotate this a little bit. And what you see is, if I again into select and move, that I can move it, but it always moves related to the viewport. And if you go into this pull down menu, there's one thing I use quite often. This is changing it from view to local, and just observe the viewport, especially the perspective viewport, and just see what's happening with the gizmo. If I just go to local, that it just changed the gizmo into the local direction of the cube, and that's a way of how to move it now into the direction of the object. I will just change it again, just go into view, And now it's again related to the viewport. You can see YX, ZX, and this is exactly the viewport direction. And again, if I go into local, then you see what is actually happening, and this is really good also if you want to move things which are already tilted and rotated. There's still some other buttons in the main menu bar. It's mirror and align. We talk about this a little bit later. You can switch on and off, for example, like the ribbon. You can switch on curve editor, schematic view. I don't use it, the curve editor. It's for animation, really handy. There's a material editor, and this is the compact material editor, and there's a slate material editor. I most of the time use the old-fashioned compact material editor. There are tools in terms of render setups, and there is also this render frame window which you use for visualization. There is a part for the layer manager, which is actually a part of my scene explorer. And just because that some of these tools are also a part of my design ribbon, we just talk about this a little bit later. The very few things, I think it's good to know that you have an undo and redo button, and you can also, if you click on this field, go back until 20 commands in both direction, and that's also a way of how to get your scene running. Okay, all we did the last hour was really boring and exhausting and probably hard to understand and hard to remember. So let's start to do something nice. We just select everything and just delete string A and just delete. And we just want to have a look at our command panel. And the first thing we have is our create button. And what you can create 3D geometries. You can also create 2D shapes, 2D lines, for example. You can create lights, you can create cameras, you have helpers, and other things which are not so important to me. For example, the only thing is under systems, daylight system, really important, but camera, light, and daylight system is not an issue with this video right now. So let's go back to geometry, and we want to work on a little bit on 3D geometries. And it's quite interesting that many advanced shapes always start with a really simple object, and quite often with a box. So what I do, I just click on box, and you have the box and you have a cube. I normally use the box, but if I go onto cube, then I just draw a cube in my viewport, and you just see that it's automatically with all sides X, Y, and Z the same dimension, which is quite nice. And that's the difference. It's just about how to create the box or the cube. You can always change the parameters. For example, let's say 100 to 60 to 100 again. And you can change the segments, which is important in X, Y, and Z direction. You can right mouse click on this object and go into move. And I just see there's one problem. I expected that there's a different X, Y, and Z. And the reason why it's like this, I'm still in local. So go back into view, so it's not related to itself. So I just go and just enter in X 0 and in Y 0. So it's again also in the middle. And when you go to box, you can also go into keyboard entry, which I hardly ever do, and just go and just say where I want to have a box of 30 by 40 by 70 centimeters, just move it a little bit in XX to 100 centimeter and then go to create. And this is also a way of how to create a box just with a keyboard entry. And remember, with the G you can switch off and on your basic grid. So I delete my second box and I concentrate on my first box. And once you created an object, you have to modify it, you have to educate it. So I just open this, I click on this modify window, and here you find a long list of modifier which you can attach to your objects. What I did here, they're a little bit like shortcuts to the modifier. If you don't have this, don't worry about this. You can switch this off, and this is probably what it looks like with you, and you can switch it on. You can also configure it, but that's not an issue right now. You can research on this on the internet. And so there are modifiers, and you also find the same thing in the part of basic modeling. So I'm just here in create 3D, so you can see different kind of primitives. And this is the interesting thing about 3D Studio Max. There are a lot of primitives which you can use when you go on create. And all these primitives have different kind of parameters. For example, under extended primitives, I also really like it is this torus knot, and also quite complex shape with a lot of parameters, and which you can work with this, and many other extended primitives. So you can create the objects also with the ribbon. That's quite similar. And once you created the objects, you can add modifiers, and you can also see some of the modifiers here in this this ribbon, but this is only a very small part of them. But the nice thing is that with these modifiers you can also see some pictures, so to understand what these modifiers actually do. You can also see the modifiers in the main menu bar, and let's have a look. You can see the modifiers sometimes also with some explanations, and let's see. Yeah, there are always some pictures for a better understanding of all these modifiers. I already said in the beginning that 3D Studio works a little bit like Photoshop. So at the end of the day, you build up a hierarchy of modifiers. So I just take one modifier at the beginning, and I just take this bend modifier, and you can just see that you can bend the box with this modifier. And I can also just add another modifier. I just go into the list and just say OP, like open subdivision. I just enter the first two letters, and then I automatically go to this modifier. And what you can just see, if you extend the iterations to, by the way, maximum of 3, and you just switch off isolate selection, that you can already create a nice sphere with this, with a really nice topology. We talk about the big thing of open subdivision modeling in another video. But what I want to point out is that you can now select the bend modifier again and just see that it's still working, and that you can just work with all of the modifiers. You could also go back to box, but right now I just extend my viewport. You can't see the box anymore because all the others are on top. And there's one thing in your modifier stack which is quite helpful. You can just say show end result toggle on or off. Right now it's on, you see the full glass. If you just click it again, you can just see half of the glass, and this just means you can only see the modifier until you have selected it. If you go up to bend, then you can see the band, and if you go to open subdivision, you can just see all of them. So this is a really helpful tool. And if I just go into box, I also can change the topology, and I just click on the segments, and if you go on show end result toggle on, then you are back again. I just select the band modifier, and obviously is still working in all directions. I already said you can switch it on and off. You can also just put it into the bin. And you can also change the order. You can just take the open sub and put it underneath the band and on top. It doesn't have a big impact with this, but with other tools and other modifiers, it can have a big impact actually. Okay. Very few modifications and transformation I would like to show you, so you get a feeling for 3D modeling. For this, I just switch off my open subdivision, and I just add the most popular modifier, which is actually the Edit Poly modifier. 3D Studio Max is a polygon modeling tool, and I just add this and I just put it underneath the open sub modifier. And if I open the Edit Poly modifier, you can see a hierarchy of vertex, and vertex are the little points like these ones. You can also move them. I definitely wouldn't do this because it's not a nice transformation of the shape. You can choose the edges and string Z, and I can go back. Border is I will explain it after polygon. I just can click on the polygons. By the way, if this polygon only has a red line around this, then you just have to press the F2 button and you can switch between these two objects. And if I just chose these polygon and delete this polygon with the delete button, then I can go back to border, and you can see what actually a border is. A border is are the edges around these around this hole. Okay, an element is in this case the whole object. It doesn't always have to be the whole object. In one Edit Poly there can be also several elements, so be aware of that. This is definitely something. Select an element also makes sense because it's not necessary that there's only one element in one 3D object. Already advanced knowledge, but really important for the future. What you can see right now, that the polygon has two colors, the bright red one and the dark red one, and it's really important to understand that the polygons have a front side and a back side, and if you want to have a solid object, the whole object always needs to have the polygons turned to the outside. So what you could do is you can just select a polygon. In theory, if this would be dark, then at the end of the day there's something like a flip function where you can turn the polygon. If I select all of them again, you can just see that this one also turned dark now, and I'll just go back in my with my undo function, and so string A, I select all polygons again, and if you look inside you can just see that you can look inside of the object. Okay, I also select this one, and I also delete this one actually, and let's do very few other things in terms of Edit Poly. With this Edit Poly, I just deleted these two polygons, and that's all I want to do on this level. So what I do just now, I just right click on this and just say rename, and I name it Edit Poly and delete. And so I remember that I deleted some polygons, and I just add another Edit Poly on top. I just go again into polygons hierarchy and just select these 4 polygons. I think I also selected the one at the back. No, I didn't. And I'll just show you one other thing. There is this insert, and you can have an insert with these polygons like this. You can also, by the way, say by polygon or by group. I just say I want to have an insert by group. And the next thing I do is I just add an extrude on top. And you can just see what we actually did. And I can also just enter a clear value like 25 centimeters and double click and finish my operation. And here again, I just rename it and just say edit poly, insert, and extrude. I put two operations inside. It would have been better if I would have used two edit poly, but this doesn't matter. Okay, the next or the last thing I do is I just enter a delete mesh modifier also on top. And what this actually does is just deletes the mesh related to the selection underneath. If I go underneath and switch off again this show end result toggle, then you can just see the selection and all the modifiers on top react to the modifier directly underneath. So this on top just deletes the top one. Okay. With this already done, I just go into my open sub on top again and just say I want to switch this on. And this is already a really nice, interesting shape where you can have different kind of variations because we used the hierarchy. This doesn't make sense because at the end of the day, then the delete reacts to everything underneath. And I can still use all these tools. And what you can also see is that it doesn't have a dimension. If I just go again into my and add another edit poly on top and go into the hierarchy of polygon and select all the polygons, then you can see that there is again these two kind of colors. So this is, for example, something you would not be able to use for 3D printing. So what you actually need, you have to add something like a shell. So it has a double surface, and there's something like a shell modifier, which is this one. And now I'll show you the last really advanced feature, which is available since 2015. X is the shortcut X. If I just press the X, then you can see this little menu, and what I just enter is SC like shell, and it just offers me all the options related to the context of the object. And this is much better than going through all the lists. It's a really easy way, and you can always use this X to search for your function. I just click on shell modifier, and I just can give this a dimension. For example, it should just extrude 5 centimeters to the inside, like this. And let's see what it looks like. It already looks really good. By the way, this is something you can already start use for your 3D printer. I close all my objects and my hierarchy, and if I just take the shell modifier and I move it underneath my open sub modifier, then you can also see what it does. The open sub modifier reacts to the hard edges, and if I switch it off, then it just looks like this. And this is another example where you can see how the order of the modifier tab does something. If I deselect my object like this, then I can use my F4 key and I can switch off the edges and I can switch on the edges. I can swap to my wireframe mode. This looks really complex, and also to the other kind of settings. And yeah, this is a short example of how to model 3D objects, and I definitely recommend, this is a good point to reflect everything I said the last hour in my video, and just play with this, draw a lot of 3D objects, get familiar with all the things. So the next step is we have a look at 2D shapes, and let's see what we can do with 2D shapes, with 2D lines and other elements. We don't want to delete this object. We want to use this object for the end of this lesson for our first visualization. So we just call it 3D design object. And then I just selected here in my layer explorer, and I just switch this off. I just press Alt W key and select right mouse click my viewport, and I just go into create. And now we already looked at geometry. We want to have a look at these shapes, and shapes are actually 2D lines. Under shapes I find splines, and we can draw normal lines. Just do a normal line and click, right mouse click. I can finish it, and I just delete it again. We talk about this a little bit later. We have primitives like circles where you can change the radius. We have n-gons. By the way, that's a really important spline for me. The n-gon is interesting because you can define the sides, and this is also a really good way to draw a triangle. You can also set a corner radius, which is quite handy. And just delete it again. Important is the text tool. Again, go a right mouse click on top view, and if you just click the first time into this viewport, then you have this text, and this text you can just change. You can just say change it to design strategies, and spelling mistakes are really bad, but doesn't matter. I can just choose different kind of typeface, and all the typeface I installed on my computer, and I just delete it again, select it and delete it. We have interesting things like stars with different kind of settings, also interesting for example for patterns. There's something like a helix, which is also nice. If I just go into my viewport, I can change the settings. I click again and change the turns, and change the radius, or the first radius. And with all these lines, you can immediately convert them to 3D objects. You just have to open this little field of rendering. And there's a button which is called Enable in Render, and obviously also enable in Viewport for your visualization. And what you have to do is just extend my viewport. You just have to increase the thickness, and you already have your first 3D object based on a line. You can just go into rectangular, and now you have it with a rectangular section, and define the length and the width, and things like this. Okay, I delete this again, and you have extended splines. I hardly use them. Typical splines for constructions. I just go into G-Grid so I can see this a little bit better. Could help, for example, like this, and these kind of things. And anyhow, there are not so many options under extended splines. So let's have a look at the line tool a little bit closer. I extend my top view with shortcut Alt-W and just choose my line tool. I just go to G-Grid so I can have this grid. And if you do your first click and move the mouse, then you can just see that I have can draw a line. If I hold my Shift key, then you can draw the line orthogonal, which is also quite handy. So I just click and move. By the way, I still have enabled render in Viewport, and Viewport switched on, so you just see it as a three-dimensional object, which I actually don't want to do. I just right mouse click and I finish my drawings. I just delete it again and switch off enable in render, enable in Viewport. And in the lower area, in terms of creation method, there's something like a drag type. I normally always have this Bezier on, and what you can do is I just click and don't have my mouse hold and click again, and so this is just a corner. And again I hold my Shift key, and if you now click and hold your mouse, then you can just see that you're able to draw curves. If you go to the first point is always yellow. You have the option to say close spline or open spline. I just say close spline right now and finish the line. So now these two things are welded. And what you can also see that this line actually does not look good. You want to optimize this, especially if you want to use it for 3D objects. And what you have to do, you have to change the interpolation. If I just go into a Modifier, there's a pull-down menu which is named Interpolation, and you can just see that this line has 6 steps, and if I just reduce it to 0 steps, you can just see that there's nothing round anymore. You can increase the steps. But what I would actually do is I would just leave it with 6 and I would just use adaptive. And if you go to adaptive, then 3D Studio tries to do the most smoothest line with very little vertex points, and vertex point is a part of the hierarchy. If you open this field line and go through the hierarchy, then you can just see that the first element is a vertex point. The second one is segment. The segment is the line between the point, and the biggest part is a spline. And again, it's not like this that in one shape there's only one spline. There can be several splines. It really depends on how you build up your shape. I just go again into the hierarchy of a vertex point, and when I select one vertex point, I can just open the quad menu of spline with right mouse click, and you can see that there are different kind of vertex points. This is a Bezier point. It could be also a corner point. I just go to corner now, and you just see that it just changed to a corner like these ones. Right mouse click, I go into smooth, and then you can see that this point is smooth again. The difference between smooth and Bezier is that with Bezier you can, so again, let's go to Bezier, you have these handles, and these handles you can increase and decrease. You can also turn it. And so you have really full control of this curve, and the aim is to draw shapes, organic shapes with as little vertex points as possible. The less vertex point you have, the better you can actually control your shape, and at the end of the day you can also add and delete vertex points. We talk about this in another video. If I just go again into right mouse click, I can go into Bezier corner. And the difference is that these handles are independent from each other, so it's another way of how to control your shape. In the next minutes we want to have a brief look in how to create 3D objects out of 2D splines. I just go and change my viewport settings again, Alt W, and just look into my perspective modes. And what I can do with the line, I can just add an extrude modifier on top. I have this shortcut button. If you don't have it, just go into the modifier list and choose extrude. And here you already see an amount because I used it beforehand. Normally you will start like this. There will be the amount 0 and segments 1, and so you can increase the amount. You can also add segments through these elements, and you can also probably then put an FFD box on top. If I just use my X key and just enter FFD, then you see that there are different kind of FFD boxes. I just choose my FFD box modifier, and you can set the number of boxes you want to have. And I just go into height of 3. And if you have done this, you can just open the FFD box and select the control points. And for example, you can just go to the first row and just use this select and scale and right mouse click top view and extend this. And the same with the lower part, and extend this one. And this kind of deformation would not have been possible if in extrude, and I just go back to extrude, the segments would have been 1. If I just go to 1 again, you can just see that nothing is happening. And of course you need a topology which at the end of the day can deal with this deformation of your FFD box. The interesting thing about working with lines is if you build up a hierarchy in your modifier tab, you can still go back to the line. If I just go to vertex and I have show end result toggle switched off, I can for example select this one and just go again and change it to a Bezier point and not a Bezier corner point again. And I just want to see what I actually do, so I just switch on end result toggle on. I can move this point, and I can also zoom in and move, select these two vertex points and the lower one, and really start to shape my my object. I just changed some more parameters, played with the control points, and when I just go back, you can just see what it was before. And if I go to this position again, you just see that I also just moved some control points around, and so this is actually the result. I right mouse click my top view, and we just draw next to this another line. I immediately hold my mouse key while dragging and go back to the first point, to the yellow point, click on this first point, but this time I don't say close spline, I don't want to close it, and finish with right mouse click again. And if I just use this kind of shape and go back to modify and extrude this, then you can just see what's happening. This thing is was not a closed spline, and extrude modifier only builds up a wall, which can also be a starting point. If you have this wall, you can put something like a shell on this wall and give this whole thing a dimension. That's definitely a common method. But if you want this also to be a closed spline, you can just go into the hierarchy of the lines and select all your vertex points, string A, or actually you know that it's about these 2 points. You just select them both, and underline there is one position which is called weld function. You can weld these points together, but you have to define the threshold, and I just extended it to 4 centimeters, and now you can just see that they are just welded together. And if I go back to extrude, you can also see that now this is a closed spline and quite similar to the other shape we do. I zoom out in my top view and look at this objects, and if I hold my shift key and move it to the right, then you have the option to copy it. We talk about this copy an instance a little bit later, and I just delete my FFD box, remove modifier from stack. You can't drag it to this bin. That's really important. You just have to click on this little bin. I also delete my extrude modifier. We already looked at this, that you can at the end of the day just can render this, enable in Viewport. There's also something like a sweep modifier. If I just press the X and just enter sweep, you get the sweep modifier, which is also quite interesting, because the option of the sweep modifier is that you have different kind of profiles, and you can choose between these profiles, and you can also adjust the profiles, the length, the width, and the thickness, and the corner radius of this profile. You can also just put an edit poly on top, and this converts the whole line through to a polygon. But if you want to work on this, what you definitely not should do, you should not just select this polygon and extrude this. This is a typical beginner's mistake. I just turn it around, and you also see why it is like this. It just open from underneath. So this is something you should not do. If you just put an edit poly on top, you can also see that one polygon is red and the other one is darkish red. So that's the backside of this polygon. I delete this edit poly and just add it on top again. What you should do is you should just put a shell modifier on top. And it already had an outer amount because I used it beforehand. But if you put a shell modifier on top, then it works properly. Another edit poly on top. And if you go into the hierarchy and polygon and select with string A all the polygons, then you can see that this is a nice geometry, and all the faces of this geometry face to the outside. Many users ask what's the difference between an edit poly and an editable poly, or an edit spline and an editable spline. We're just at the beginning, but we want to figure this out immediately. If I just take this object and hold my shift key and move it to the left, and by the way, this is something I did not want to do, but it's a good way of showing it to you right now, because I just did it, because I did it in the hierarchy of polygon. This also could happen to you. So I just finish clone to object. Then you can just see what I was talking about, that one object can have different or several elements. I just delete this again because I didn't want this, and I just close my deselect my element level, and then you can also see that this little symbol on the right side is gone. You can also see that it changes from vertex to edge. So if you close your modifier and you still had the hierarchy selected, then you can see that you are still in the edge mode, which I definitely don't want. So let's hold the shift key and move this to the left and do a copy. And what I can do is I can just collapse the whole thing. On top there is a modifier edit poly. If I just go right mouse click and say convert to, and convert it to different kind of 3D objects. I just want to convert it to an editable poly. You can see what's happening. The whole thing is collapsed only to one modifier, of course. And starting from here, you can add again more modifiers. For example, like this band, you can just bend this whole thing and just play with this a little bit in different kind of directions, and do whatever you want to do on top. So the editable poly is always underneath, and if I just put an edit poly on top, you can just see on top is always edit poly, underneath is always editable poly. And if I select the first one and just delete all my modifiers, I have a line which is actually a spline. If I just convert it to editable spline. Okay, oh, I just learned something. I expected the word editable poly here, but obviously it doesn't change from line to editable poly. I'll just do another example. I just go into shape and draw these egg shape. I can change the parameters at the end of the day. The whole thing is fully parametric, and if I now just say right mouse click and go into convert to editable spline, then this is what I actually expected. And also here you just put an extrude modifier on top, and you also put an edit poly on top, and you can just see edit poly, and underneath is an editable spline. What you could also have done is you can put an edit spline on top, and you can just see the difference, or it would have been possible to keep it like the egg. I just go back right now and just put an edit spline on top. So everything on top is edit spline, everything underneath is the base, editable spline, editable polygon, editable mesh, and things like this. I just delete all three elements, and the first line, I just go into zoom extend. I just rename it and call it 2D design object. And this is also something we would like to use for our visualization at the end. And my big recommendation, this is a good point to experiment a little bit by yourself. Draw lines, extrude them, change the parameters so that you practice a little bit. Before we go to the next chapter, I just want to tell you something about lines in 3D Studio Max. With the lines, it's like this. You can draw organic lines. This is easy, but if you want to do it precisely, and as an architect and designer, you really want to have the right measurements and things like this. It's really difficult to deal with this. So what I recommend is a plugin. It's called Meow's Polyline Pro plugin. You can also buy it from Meowscript Blogspot. And this plugin is really good and fills the gap in terms of drawing with lines. And it's a little bit like AutoCAD. Okay, I switch off my 2D design object. I select my toolbar and press G so we can see it a little bit better. And what I can do if I draw my first point, you can already see that I can enter my numbers, for example, like 100 centimeters, that's my first line. And the next one should be 40 centimeters. And I can also draw arcs and then I also have the option to have a menu where I can control the kind of snappings. It's really a little bit like AutoCAD, and really useful, and I really recommend if you want to draw things properly that you use these tools, and it fills the gap in terms of drawing precisely and really fast in 3D Studio Max. There are some videos about the polyline tool, but if you just open the help, then you can also learn it quickly and just show you that there are really nice little videos in this file to show you how to deal with this plugin. In the next part of this lesson, we want to look at functions like copy, instance, and reference objects, and we want to get closer into these object placement. So the first thing we do is, again, we just draw a really simple box. I'm top view, I just see like grid, and I just switch off my snap toggle. We talk about this a little bit later in this video, really important topic. I just go into a box, and in these terms I just don't draw a box, I just draw a cube. This is even easier because it immediately has the same length, width, and height. And just have a look at this in my perspective mode. And the first thing which is interesting in terms of object placement, if you just switch on this auto grid, and I just extend my perspective viewport and go again into box, you can just see that your gizmo changes and always positions on the surface you are touching. So what you can do, it just draws a temporary gizmo and a temporary grid, and you can just draw on the face you are selecting, and you can also do it with a sphere. This does not matter, and you can just see what I'm doing. And if I press F4, then you can again go into edge face mode, and you can see properly which kind of edge I actually select. Okay, let's go back one further up. The first box I want to keep, and let's start with copy and all the other functions in terms of cloning. I changed to my top view. By the way, I just used the shortcut T to top view. I can use T, I can use the shortcut L for left, I can use the shortcut B for bottom, and P for perspective. And also you can choose to the orthographic mode, which is called U, like a user mode. And again, I go into T top view. I recommend to remember these shortcuts because you are much faster. And in terms of copying object, there are several options. I select my cube, and I can just say string C or Control C. And if I copy it and again say string V or Control V, you can see that a window opens, and it just opens and shows you the option copy, instance, and reference. I just go to copy, and I just see here in my layer manager that I have a copy of box 002. I'm sorry, a copy of box 001, and I just delete this again. And what you can also do is, if you have selected the first box, you just open the quad menu, right mouse click, and you can just go and select clone, and then you're at the same spot, and you can copy objects. I delete this again. You can also just select it, and I hold my shift key, and you just move the object while holding the shift key, and I just unclick my left mouse click, and what you can see right now, that you can again choose between copy, instance, and reference, and you can select how many objects you want to have. And if I just choose 10, then you create immediately 10 objects. I zoom out with my mouse, and this is also really good and handy tool in terms of copying. If I just copy it, for example, to the right and upper part, and just say 5, then it looks like this. So what's the difference between copy, instance, and a reference? I just copy the box twice as a normal copy, and I'll just switch off my grid at the back and have 3 copies. And if I just look at this in perspective, and let's say P perspective, and move it a little bit, then you can just see if I change the parameter of the last box, it doesn't have any impact on the other ones. So if I choose the first one again, this one, and I copy it 3 times, I just copy it twice as an instance, you can see what's happening, because if you change the parameters of this object, then all the others are also moving and deforming and transforming. If you just put a modifier on top, for example, like my open sub modifier, you can just see that out of my cube, it changed to a sphere, and you can change the parameters of this. You can also put another modifier on top, for example, like this bend modifier, and it has an impact on all objects. And you can always see that there's something like an instance. If you see in the modifier tab the typeface bold, this always means that there's something like an instance. And if you want to take one out of this family of instances, then you just select on one of the objects, and there's this little thing, make unique, in your modifier tab. If you click on this, then you can just see that the typeface changed to regular, and you can move again this object, and you can just delete the modifiers, and it's not a part of the family anymore. But it's also not possible to take it in again. So always, if you go into make unique, your instance is gone. But anyhow, a really powerful and important function. Okay, I go back in my undo until the point of make unique, and let's have a look at the other method of copying, which is called reference. I just select my second cube grid. I just switch off. I copy it, hold my shift key, and with my left mouse, and stop it here, and I just choose reference and go into number of copies 2. Okay, what's the difference between copy and instance? If I just add a modifier on top again, like this open sub, you can just see it completely looks like an instance, but it is a reference. So nothing special about this. And by the way, never have more iterations than 3. You can just see what's happening. At the end of the day, the geometry will become too dense and too heavy. I go again on isolate display, so I don't want to see this right now. If I choose the second one, the second reference, you can see a difference. If I go to the second one and the third one, there's a little bit of a gray line on top. And if I now put another modifier on top of this, for example, again, like this bend modifier, and I move it, then you can see that this is just related to the one which I actually added this modifier, and it's not related to the other ones. But everything underneath this line is related to the whole family, and everything on top is only related to the one I have selected. Okay, let's have a look. If I just switch off this open subdivision, then you can see this still has the bend modifier. The others are just switched off. I can also take the open sub and move this over the line. Now you can see that it only is related to the last one. I can also move the band and just move it underneath the lines of references. This doesn't actually look too good, and then you can see that it has an impact on all three of them. So there are many options of how to play with this, and obviously also here you can just say you want to have this object as a unique one. I just go to the position where things in common, and now I'm able to say make unique, and if I change the parameters, then it's not connected to the other guys anymore. Okay, let's go back. So what we have is we have an instance, we have a reference, and a reference is quite similar to an instance, but the childs of this can have modifiers on top, under, above the line, and then this is only related to this explicit object. And you can have just normal copies, and if you just have a normal copy like this, then you can do whatever you want to do with these objects, and it's not related to the parent anymore. Okay, with this knowledge, I just select 002 and 009 with my shift key, and I delete this. Just say delete. With this knowledge, let's have a look at the options of object placement. Obviously, you have to select an object. I just turn off band and open subdivision. So I would like to have a look at this array. I just open the array tool, move it a little bit to the left, also move out in my viewport, and you can set the count of the objects. I want to have 10 objects, and I also just want to have a preview, so you can already see this in my scene state manager that I created 10 objects. You can't see it right now. If you want to see this, then you probably move this. I just move it into Z direction. I just have a look what kind of amount is appropriate, and just move it with 50 centimeters, press enter, and now they moved 50 centimeters in one direction. You can also rotate them. If I just go into Z direction, you can just see how I rotate my objects. And you can also scale them, make them bigger, make them smaller in all directions. There's also the option to see this in a second dimension. If I go and just change to my second dimension and press the count of 3, then you can also see that it multiplied by 3, so I have 30 boxes. I can't see it right now because they're all on top of each other. So if I just move them now in Y direction, for example, also like 50 centimeters, and I just finish with enter, you can already see that they moved in the Y direction. I can also do it with the third dimension, like this, and enter 50 centimeters in that direction again, enter, then you can just see that it moved up like this. And now if you then go into reference and finish your operation, then you can just see what is happening. If you just switch on open sub, then they all change. If you switch on bend, you can also see what is happening. And if you just move this up, then you can see that this band is only related to one object, and the other one don't move anymore, because at the end of the day we created a reference array. Okay, let's go back to my undo, and how much do I have to go back? Let's just see. I just go back 2 positions, and here we go and have our single objects. The next thing is quite obvious. It's the mirror function. By the way, the mirror function is also here in your top menu, and you can have this as no clone, so you can just see that it's turning. You can have it as a copy, And as a copy, you want it to move a little bit, and you can define how much it moves, copy, instance, and reference. And you can also just define in which direction it should mirror, and that's quite obvious. You can play with this a little bit. A lot of options you have with the spacing tool. Just imagine you have a long table, for example, like this, and you just put a teapot on this with AutoGrid. I just position it here on the corner. That's my teapot, and you want to have many teapots on your table. You just go to the spacing tool, just say pick points, and I want to start at this part and go to the end of the table, and you can just see that I positioned different teapots on the table, and you can also choose the amount of teapots you want to have. Okay, let's go back. Another thing is pick path, also really nice. I just draw a path with Bezier drag type on, and this is my path. Zoom out a little bit and probably even further. By the way, it's quite interesting. It's so it depends on where you move the mouse. You can set your viewport. So what I do is I just scroll out and point into the left direction. Then you can see it's more spice on the right, and so it's a very good way of how to control the viewport and the part of the viewport. So you see, you should practice this a little bit. And just draw my line like this and finish my line. So what I do, I just select my first object. I go into pick path and click on my line, and here we go. You can change the count, and there are also many other settings you can look at and play with this, and so there are many options of how to align things along a path. The align function next to this is really important. If I just go into geometry and I just draw a cube and I just draw another cube, then you can just align this cube to the first one. I just go into the align function, which is actually the same in this setting. There's some more functions underneath, but I just want to have the align function. You can see that the cursor change, and if I choose this object, then the menu opens, and you can just choose in which direction you want to align it. By the way, you can just see the element which is just glowing behind. So you can just say you only want to have Y and Z position, or only Z position, or X, Y, and Z position. And you can choose between minimum and maximum, for example, or maximum and minimum, or center to center. So these are a lot of options you can have. Pivot point to pivot point, we also talk about this. So just get familiar with this. If you're not really sure what is the top or the minimum and the maximum, you can just actually play with this, and you will figure it out just while observing your viewport. The clone and align just works for groups and selections. I had to use it. I also had to use the placement. The object placement is probably interesting for visualization. It's a really nice gimmick, so I will just show you what you can do with this. So just imagine you want to have create plans. You go into AEC Extended, and under foliage you can choose plants. I just take this generic oak and click into the viewport, zoom out a little bit, and here's my oak plant, and I just go into isolate selection, zoom out again, and next to this oak, under standard primitives, geosphere, I just create the world. Okay. So I want to select my tree again, and this tree should be placed on my sphere. So what I do is I just go into object placement, select the menu, and just say, okay, this object should be my object which I want to place, and I want to place it on this surface. And there are a lot of options you can define. The most important thing is the spacing tool. I think I set it up to 2000. So if I just draw now on my sphere, you can just see what is happening. It just draws the tree on my sphere. If I change it to 500, you can just see that it's more dense. And if I now just turn the sphere and just look at this, and you can see that these trees are all nicely positioned. You can see the trees even better if you just go and just say Viewport canopy mode never. Then you can just see the trees. I hold my Alt key and my middle mouse and just turn them. And if you want to have a quick look at a visualization, let's have a look at this. And I just go on to render to production. Then you can see that these trees are already set up with really nice and detailed leaves. So if you just make a photorealistic visualization, they already look really well. By the way, also the trees are parametric, so you can just define the height of the tree. And just I want to have a smaller one, like 200. You can adjust the density and just say maximum is 1, by the way, and just say 0.2, and then you have less leaves and whatever kind of thing you can adjust it. And again, these are references or instances, so that's why it has an impact of all of them. If you just go into and have one tree selected and go into make unique and change the parameters again, and you can just see that this only works on one tree, and all the other ones are like before again. This menu hierarchy, and there's something like effect pivot point, and if you switch this on and move into my top view, then you can just move the pivot point. By the way, also something which you could get used to, there are shortcuts like Q, W, and E and R, and you can just see what happens if I just go through these letters. You can choose your transformation tools. So if I go into E or into W, you can move the pivot point to the top. And it's important that you have to switch off effect pivot point afterwards. Otherwise, you're constantly moving and turning only the pivot point. But if I switch it off and I just go into rotate, then you can see that you can rotate it the way you want to. And I can go again into pivot point, also move it completely somewhere else. You can also relate it to another object, by the way. And again, I switch off effect pivot point and I rotate it again. Then you can just see that it rotates to a point outside the object. And you can also say effect pivot point again and just go to center objects and switch it off again. And then your pivot point is again in your object. So there are many options also in terms of pivot point, but these two, effect pivot point only and center to object, are used quite often. For architects and designers, it's really important to construct precisely and that there are no gaps between your objects. So what we want to look at right now are your snap functions, a really important issue. So what I do is I just draw a cube, and I draw another cube next to this. Just see that the viewport looks a little bit like my viewport. So you have 4 viewport windows. You can see all the objects go into zoom extend selected. So you select all of them, string A, and just say zoom extend all selected. This cube, zoom out a little bit, you just move up a little bit. And okay, so it's not on the same line again. And let's have a look at these snap functions. There's this snap toggle. And on default, it's on 3-dimensional snapping. If you hold with your left mouse click this button, then you can see that there are different kind of options. There's a 2, 2.5, and a 3D snap option. We start with the 3D snap option. And if you want to define what you want to snap, then you just have to choose the right mouse click. And you can define which kind of elements you want to snap. Normally it's switched on grid points, which I actually hardly ever use. The grid points, the grid to the origin of 3D Studio Max, I deselect it. I just go to vertex, and when I choose vertex, then I can choose my object and select it. And again, we already talked about the gizmo and that you can move it along the z-axis and that you can move it along the y-axis. This is obvious, and I already told you that this is my menu right mouse click axis constraints. I can switch it on and off in my menu bar. I always have it on, and I always use enable axis constraints. So if you have this switched off, just please switch it on right now. So what you can do is you can just click in the middle. I just move this a little bit and move this object, and you can just see what is happening. You just move it, and you move it to the corner of one object, and it just moved down in my front view and also in my perspective. I just move out a little bit, and I take one of the corners, and you can just see if you touch the corners, there is a little bit of a cross. And again, I select it. I don't have one corner selected. I just want to have this yellow square selected. I select it with my mouse. I choose the little cross, and you can just see what is happening in my front view. It just goes down. Move it up again a little bit, and again select it and move it. So this is not something we want to have. Imagine you just position objects in a room, and then at the end of the day, all the furniture or whatever you have are on the same level. This is, I think, actually a bad surprise. But this 3D mode is definitely good if you just want to work in perspective. You can just choose it and have a really good way of positioning it. You can also choose other snap options. If you don't use grid point, you can already see that there are shortcut buttons for this. I just deselect grid point. It's this button. Vertex, at the end of the day, you can just recognize with the symbols. I like midpoint. I also sometimes use endpoint, which is quite similar to vertex. So if I just take this again, you can just see that I can also attach it to the midpoint. I can also just choose all to the center of the object and position the center to the of the object to my element. Just observe a little bit the top view, and you can see what I'm actually doing. And again, I take the center of this. And now it snaps to the middle and the center of my object. I normally don't use this 3D snap function. I normally always use the 2.5D, and I'll just show you what's happening if I just move this object out again a little bit, and I just have my snap toggle on, and then I can again choose this corner, move the corner, and you see what is happening. It still snaps, but it doesn't have any impact in terms of the Z dimension. And this is really handy. I don't work much in my perspective view. I most of the time work in top view, left and front view, and I just observe what's happening in my perspective because I have a much better control if I just work in these kind of viewports. So I recommend to work in a 2.5D mode. If you go into the 2D mode, which I hardly ever use, then you can see it only works when the objects are exactly on the same level. So let's move back to my 2.5D mode. I just select right mouse click my front view, select this point, and no, I just select my y-axis, and only my y-axis and the corner point at the lower part, align it to the bottom. And if I now change again to 2D mode and right mouse click my top view, then you can just see that it can align, but it only aligns if these two objects are on the same level. So this is not what I'm normally interested in. I always work in my 2.5D mode, which is absolutely fine. I have my top view selected again, and I just use the shortcut for grid. I hardly ever use my grid. I sometimes switch it on to see that my objects are more or less close to the origin. Just keep in mind, the further the objects are away from the origin, the more difficult it is for 3D Studio to calculate, because it just starts to abstract things to deal with the whole scene. So I just switch on my snap toggle again. You can do it with the shortcut S. And the shortcut S I also use quite often, so I don't always have to go to this menu. I just say right mouse click on my grid snappings and go to home grid. On default, I think the home grid is with 10 centimeters, and I just change it to 20 centimeters, and sometimes I use it, this grid function, for example, to draw lines. I deselect vertex, endpoint, and midpoint. And I just choose my line tool and move in a little bit. You can also see that it starts to abstract if you move out. So the different kind of appearances regarding the scaling. I maximize my top view, and I just draw my line. I move in a little bit with my mouse, and you can also see that it not only snaps to the grid, but also to positions in the middle of the grid. So just be aware that this is also a way of how it can snap. So that's a good reason to zoom in and out. So just do something really, really simple. And I close my spline. Okay, and now that we draw this line, let's see how we can adjust this line. I just go into my Modifier tab. I open my line context menu, and I choose in hierarchy my vertex points. With my snap function on, I just press the S button. I just choose deselect grid points. I select my vertex point and choose this vertex point, and I have my axis align constraint on. I choose my x-axis, and you can see that I can move it and just adjust it to, for example, the vertex point on top. I just choose this point, I select my x-axis, and you can also see that I can adjust it. I take my y axis from this vertex point and I can adjust it to this one. I take the x-axis, and I can adjust it to this point. So that's a really good way of adjusting points. What I also do quite often, that I just have a reference cube. For example, I have this cube which has the dimensions of 60 something of 60 something. I want to do it precisely, and then I just change it to 60 by 60 by 60 centimeters, and I just move it to the top. Just again, take this little one and have this one. And what I do quite often, I use cubes like this as a reference. So I just select these two vertex points, and I just move it up to the cube. So this is what happened right now. And what I also do quite often, I just draw a simple box, like I already did right now, for example, something like this. And I don't care about the dimension of this box, because I immediately put an edit poly on top, and then I go into the hierarchy. I choose my vertex point, and I adjust it just to the dimensions of a wall, of a reference, objects, and so whatever. So a box is quite often the initial starting point, and I just draw it without caring of the dimension, because if I put an edit poly on top, then I can just adjust it precisely however I want to have it. Snap functions you should and have to practice a lot, so you feel absolutely familiar with this. That's a really important issue. When you go to object inspection, you have the option to measure distances. If I go to measure distance, you can select the first point and now the second point. And in the menu, in the lower point on the left side, you can see that this has a dimension of 80 centimeters. So again, I just go into measure, first one and second one, and I measured the dimension because I switched on snap function and vertex toggle. You can also use a taper. So if I use a taper, I can drag and hold it and just measure the dimension between these lengths, and you can also see that these are objects, and you can also delete obviously these objects, and there are many other options you can do with this taper. If you're interested in this, you can have a specific length and use it to align objects to this taper. Okay, let's just delete this again. You can also set helper points or any other objects as helpers, and just position one helper point at this corner and a helper point at this corner, and you can measure angles. You just do it with the protector tool. I don't use it often, but I think it's good to know that there's something like this in 3D Studio Max. I just select this point of my object and select object number 1 and select object number 2. And there's an angle of 48 centimeters between these points. And if I just take this point again and I move it, so constrained to my initial protector, and I choose my protector again, I just go into Modifier, then you can see it has an angle of 90 degrees. So that's also a way of how to measure angles in 3D Studio Max, and of course you can also do it in perspective and in a three-dimensional viewport. If you select one of these object points and move them, then you can't see the angle anymore. So string Z, what you can do is there's one trick in your modifier tab. If you choose your protector and you are in the modifier tab, there's this little thing like pin stack. If you just stack it, then you can just choose any other object and you still can see what's happening in your modifier stack. So just see that I don't lose this window, and with this function on, I can just still observe the angle. And this is just something on top which sometimes is interesting to know. Probably you already asked yourself, what is about this little thing in my modifier tab. You can also measure the length and the surface area and the volume of 3D objects. What I do is align, and if I go into utilities, then you can see this a menu measure. And the length of this spline is, for example, 765 centimeters. If I just draw a surface, for example, like this plane, and I again go into utilities measure, you can see that you can see, measure the surface area of 127 square centimeters. And if I just draw an object, for example, like this sphere, and of course you can also put modifiers on top, and I just bend this right now to make it a little bit different to a sphere. You can again go into a measure, and here you can see the surface area and the volume, and this is also a function you can just use if you need it. I used a lot my Scene Explorer, but we didn't talk about this much. Just a brief look into this Scene Explorer. You can choose between showing it by layers or by hierarchy. I always go by layers, by the way. And there's also a pull-down menu where you can choose how you want to look at this. You can't see my pull-down menu in total, but I just choose Layer Explorer because there are just more options in how to look at your objects. And if I go on to this plus symbol, and I had selected one, then I just go onto this menu point, create layer, and I just can call these layers helpers. I just select with my shift key my helper points and move it on top of the layer symbol, and then you can already see that you can just put it into the layers. You can switch it on and off. I just create another layer which is called basics, and I just take these kind of objects and move this into my layer basics, and I create another layer which I called export, and you just see when I have selected objects, then they automatically move to the new layer which I create. So just be aware of, if you create a new layer, what kind of objects you have selected. You can just drag and drop it again into the basic layer, and you can also just say add selection to, right mouse click and pick this layer, and just pick the basic layer, and then it's also in again. So there are a lot of options also with right mouse click. The default layer you can't delete. You can only delete layers actually when they are empty, and when this is not the layer which is the active layer where you draw on. This is a really important issue. There's this blue symbol, and this is always the active layer. So if I just go and draw a box, then this box is just drawn in my layer export. You can see it right now because this layer is active. I just delete it again, and if I just switch on my default layer as my basic layer, then you can just see that I just draw it on the default layer. By the way, the default layer you are not able to delete. Every other layer which is not the active layer, you can just delete and just say delete, and then this layer is deleted. Okay, I just call it again export. And choose my first two objects which I created and drag and drop it onto my layer export. All the other layers I just switch off, and also the helpers I switch off. My 2D and 3D object I switch on again. I just changed to F3 like shaded mode. This definitely does not look good because they are just on top of each other. So I just go into top view and take my first object and move it out a little bit. And these were the objects we were working on. And you see that the second one is huge compared to the other one, and you normally just say I scale it. But with scaling there's one issue. You have this scaling factor, and this is 40%. But this scaling factor does not or did not arrive at your modifier tab. Sounds complicated, so I just give you a small example. If you just create a box, this is my box with 100 by 100 by 100 centimeters. I switch off my grid because I just don't need it. I just changed to wireframe mode, F3. I zoom in a little bit, and I put on top a shell modifier with an inner amount of 10 centimeters. And there's one thing also in terms of the shell modifier. It always tries to interpolate. Between these edges. So if you really want to have 10 centimeters, just keep in mind you always should have straightened corners on. This is not really done for designers and architects. It's more like face modeling and something similar. So if you have something orthogonal, always use shell modifier with straightened corners. So if I just measure the dimensions of this, and I just do it with a simple box. I just go inside, I have my vertex snap toggle on. I just click first time and also here, and you just can see that I do it again, go into a box. By the way, I can also use plane, it's probably easier to see. So I just draw a plane. You can see this is 10 by 10 centimeters. That's also a really easy way of how to measure things. I just delete it. So this is 10 centimeters. This is obvious. This is what I actually expected. Okay, I copy this object twice. So let's take the second one. I put this one into the bin and I just scale it. Okay, I'll just make it bigger. And you just see that I have a scaling factor of now 200%. Just move it to the right, and this one I also move out again. By the way, no, I deleted it. I just copy it again because this is how I want to work with. And I just choose my first object and I put again on top a shell modifier. And with a dimension of 10 centimeters, and if I measure it again, and it's really just easy to just take a plane, just snap and take a plane, then you just see it's 20 centimeters, so something went wrong. And what did actually go wrong is that this thing has this scaling of 200%. If you go into select and uniform scale, then you can just see that there's a scaling factor of 200%. So what do you have to do? If you scale in this way, you should go into utilities, go into reset XForm and say reset selected. If you do this, then you have a scaling factor of 100%. So let's go back to your modifier tab and you just see that there's a modifier on top. This is called xform. If you drag and drop this underneath your shell function, then you see what happened. The shell function dimension changed, and if I again take my plane with a length and width segment of 1 and draw my plane in the corner, then you can see that it is again right. You have a shell dimension of 10 centimeters. I go again into my Modifier tab and you switch off grid, and you can just see what switch off xform, you can see what is happening. So how do you scale properly, or how can you avoid doing it in this way? What you also can do is you just go back to 100%. I just put an edit poly on top, and you just go into element. You choose this element, and then you scale it. For example, right mouse click, you can scale it to 200%, which is actually the same like the left one. And if you again put your shell modifier on top, you can also copy it. I just take this object and say right mouse click on shell and copy it. Use the other object and just say right mouse click and paste it. Then you see that also this works properly. I delete these two modifiers, and another thing you could do is you can just put an xform modifier on top. You can't see my menu, so what I do is I just use my shortcut X and just enter xform modifier. And if you just go in this hierarchy and select it, then you can also open your scale, select transform type, enter 200%, and the whole thing scales. And also here again, you have a scaling factor of 100%, which is right. And also here again, put your shell modifier or whatever kind of modifier you have on top, and it works properly. Difficult issue, especially at the end of this, more or less the end of this tutorial, but important if you don't want to muddle up your 3D scene. Okay, so even if I don't want to do anything with my objects in terms of modifier and things, I just want to export it, I still go into utilities and say Resort xform selected. Because, for example, if I just want to put a material onto this, like a wooden material or things like this thing will not be in scale properly. It will just be bigger or smaller than you expect. So always see that if you go and select an object, this should be a 100% in terms of scaling factor. Otherwise, it could be that you end up in trouble. Okay. I save my scene, but if this is a scene you worked on, you should constantly save different kind of variations. And I just save it with another name, tutorial 0.1. And the last thing we want to do in terms of learning a curve, we want to make a visualization of these two objects we worked on. We want to integrate these two objects in our digital design object scene. If you have the DE Workspace installed, just close 3D Studio Max and reopen it again. This is normally not the way of how you should do this, but if you now go into open, then it just moves to a folder which is on default when you use my Workspace. Otherwise, download from my internet page the DE Studio Scene 3D Studio Max mental way as a template. I just open this right now, and I click OK. There's this little studio sign. I just delete this. Sometimes this happens really weird in 3D Studio that you have two scene explorers. I just pull one out and also close this. I go again into Get Started and into Merge in this case, or I just go into this option and just import merge. This is more or less the same. And I move to my folder, to my last scene. I just have it on my desktop, DE scene 01. I open it. And I have these two objects, 2D and 3D design objects. And I just want to import this, click OK, and here we go. So you can just see that this viewport is used by my camera. I can select my camera and also move out a little bit, so I have a better idea of my scene. So what I would like to do is I would like to position my objects on my presentation table. I just select these objects and go into select and place, move it, and now I can just move it on the table. And I obviously can also turn it. Just see that you select the wide axis. And the next one, I choose this one. I go into to select and place, and first move it a little bit up, and here you can already see that you can select and place it on my surface. It's already sitting on the surface, so I just move it a little bit and also turn it. The camera so far does not look too good because I can hardly see my second object. So what I do is I just take again the camera and I just move up the camera in my front view, right mouse click on front view and lift the camera. So it's a little bit like this, and there's also a target point where you look at. I just choose the target point, and also here I just move this target point up a little bit and select my camera window, and with this I can use my dolly function, move it a little bit up and adjust it properly. So I think this already looks quite well. Okay, before we do our final visualization, you see that these objects have the same color. By the way, this is the layer color. If I have my modifier on, you can see a black and white surface, and this is means that it has the layer color switched on. If I click on this, it says by layer, and you can just choose a different color, and now it's the color by object, but it's still definitely nothing nice for visualization. So this video is not about visualization, but I just open my material editor, and there's one material I already adjusted. By the way, I am in compact material editor. I just drag and drop it to the object. With the other one, we already figured out that this could look a little bit boring. So I just go to a different kind of material, go and open my arc and design material. And here I just choose a class, for example, like this clear glazing, double click, and also here I drag and drop it on my second model. And yeah, we are already nearly ready for our first visualization, but like a normal thing with photography is you have to adjust the brightness, you have to adjust the aperture and the exposure control. So what you do is you click on this field render preview. And you see that it could be slightly brighter. I just changed the value to 6, probably even 5.5. Like I said, it's not really about visualization right now. And the last thing you do is you just open the rendered frame window, which is actually this one, and press the render menu if you have selected your camera viewport, and click on rendering, and after some seconds you can already see the first result, and it probably takes, it really depends on your computer, 1 minute or a little bit longer, and you made your first visualization based on the two objects we worked on in our 3D scene before. Okay, this is what it looks like with me after 1 minute of calculating my visualization. The aim of this video was to give you a full picture of the basics of 3D Studio Max. At the end of the day, you just have to practice a lot, and it's impossible to watch this video and just learn it in one go. It just takes weeks and months. There are still a lot of things you should learn from the future. For the future, there's, for example, like a bool operation, and you found it under compound objects. There is Boolean and pro-Boolean. What you can do is, if you have the first object and you just go into subtraction, you can start picking this and just subtracted this sphere. I just put another sphere on top like this with my AutoGrid function, and go back again into my objects and also start picking this. So there are options like this with bool operation, just to give you an idea. You can also do other things. You can also unify, which is quite handy. If I have my objects and I just go into union and go into start picking, you just see what is happening with my 3D shape, which is also really important feature. Just read up on designstrategies.org. Another design strategy is a loft function. I just have a line and just go into compound objects and then into loft. And I just can go into get shape, and you can just see this line, and the shape just makes this happen, that this goes along this spline. You can also combine it with other shapes. For example, if I go back to the 100% end of it and I just take the rectangle, and then you see a transformation between a circle and a cube. There are things like I showed you, like this close function, which is also not too difficult to use. There are many videos out in YouTube where you can learn really interesting things. There is this amazing parametric 3D plugin for 3D Studio Max, where you have a full potential of really innovative designs, and also these things, once you understand the basic of 3D Studio Max, are manageable, something you can learn. So I hope you are inspired and motivated to do your own design, and you find many more information on my internet page, designstrategies.org. And once you learn the basics of 3D Studio Max, you can just look at the design strategies and see what kind of design strategy fits to your conceptual design idea. And this is the essence of my video. It's about your design, and I would like you to enable to make it happen, and also to enable to think in terms of design strategies, because this would help you a lot for your development. Thanks for watching.